When you hear the word Tibet, you might picture monasteries, prayer flags, and snow-capped mountains. But for China's leadership, Tibet is far more than a beautiful landscape. It's a strategic prize, one they are determined never to lose. China takes Tibet very seriously than we have ever imagined. For the Chinese Communist Party, Tibet is proof of its own narrative, that it liberated a feudal, backward land and brought it into modernity. Giving up Tibet would not only weaken China's borders, it would shatter the party's claim to hold the nation together. And with Tibet's Buddhist traditions and the global influence of the Dalai Lama, Beijing is determined to make sure there is no rival source of loyalty outside party control. Now they openly threatening even Tibetan living outside of Tibet. Tibet is about the future. By 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic, China envisions Tibet not as a frontier, but as a fully assimilated heartland. Urbanized, developed, and tied in every sense to Beijing. If you want to understand China's propaganda on Tibet, you have to look at the specifics, the slogans, the visuals, and the storylines they repeat constantly. It's a very coordinated effort and well planned for decades. First, just look at the slogans you see everywhere in Tibet. They're painted on walls and billboards. Phrases like, "Without the Communist Party, there would be no new Tibet," or "The party's grace is as boundless as the Himalayas," are meant to hammer home the idea that any progress or happiness Tibetans have is a direct gift from the party. They also emphasize national unity, with slogans like, "Strengthen national unity," "Safeguard the motherland," to counter any talk of independence. Then you have the visual propaganda. Think about the posters and images they circulate. They love showing smiling Tibetans in traditional clothes, often standing happily next to a PLA soldier or a Chinese flag. A common theme is the before and after comparison. On one side, you see a dark, miserable old Tibet with chained serfs, and on the other, a bright, sunny, modern city with happy, working people. This is to reinforce the narrative that the CCP rescued them from a dark feudal past. You also see a lot of images combining traditional Tibetan symbols, like the Potala Palace, with modern Chinese development, dams, railways, and highways, to show that tradition and modernization can coexist harmoniously under the party's guidance. The state media also plays a huge role. TV channels like CCTV and news agencies like Xinhua and YouTube travel vloggers run the same stories over and over. They profile model Tibetans, monks or herders who talk about how much better their lives are because of the party's policies. They show footage of Han Chinese tourists enjoying folk dances, trying to create an image of ethnic harmony. The Qinghai Tibet Railway is a favorite topic, always portrayed as a lifeline of happiness that brings prosperity. And you'll see a lot of children in school uniforms learning Mandarin and Tibetan language while still wearing their traditional dress, to show that their culture is preserved while they embrace modern education. When you look at official reports and news articles, certain signature phrases pop up all the time. They'll say that Tibet has entered its golden age of development, or accuse the Dalai Lama of being a liar and separatist. They'll claim that religious freedom is fully protected, but quickly add that illegal activities under the cloak of religion are not tolerated, which is a way of justifying control over monasteries and religious practices. Finally, there's the international propaganda, which is a bit different. On English-language platforms like CGTN, they avoid a lot of the political jargon. Instead, they use poetic language, calling Tibet the roof of the world that thrives under China's care. They use stunning drone shots of mountains and monasteries, then cut to interviews with Tibetan shopkeepers who praise tourism and economic growth. They focus on things like poverty alleviation and cultural festivals to downplay any political issues and present a more palatable, tourist-friendly image to the world. If you want to understand what's happening inside Tibet today, you have to look at how China is reshaping it from the ground up. You know, when people talk about Tibet, they often focus on the cultural and political side of things. But there's a whole other aspect that's really important, and that's the massive military advantage China gains from it. It's not just about politics, it's about hard power. First, imagine having the highest military ground on Earth. That's what China has in Tibet. The plateau sits at an average of 4,500 meters, which means whoever controls it controls the crest of the Himalayas. From up there, China has a huge strategic advantage over India, Nepal, and Bhutan. They can put high-altitude bases, radars, and missile systems there to monitor and even dominate South Asia. Then there's the fact that Tibet borders India, China's main rival. The 1962 war was fought right here, and since then, China has built an incredible network of roads, railways, and tunnels along the line of actual control. This allows them to move troops and heavy equipment to the border incredibly fast, while India has to deal with much more difficult terrain on its side. And it's all supported by strategic infrastructure. The Qinghai Tibet Railway and a network of highways seamlessly link the region to China's interior. High-altitude airports in places like Lhasa and Shigatse allow fighter jets and transport planes to operate on short notice. They've even built underground storage for missiles and supplies to make their presence there even more secure. Tibet's terrain also gives China a significant nuclear and missile advantage. The rugged landscape provides perfect cover for missile silos and early warning systems. This allows them to station medium-range and even long-range missiles on the plateau, giving them strike capability deep into India and potentially towards U.S. bases in the Indo-Pacific. Ultimately, by militarizing Tibet, China sends a clear message to the world. This region is ours and untouchable. It strengthens their negotiating position with India and projects their power far beyond the plateau itself. It's a key part of their strategic dominance in the region. Lately, the People's Liberation Army has been seriously ramping up its military exercises in the Tibet Autonomous Region. These aren't just for show. They're part of a bigger strategy to lock down control and project military power. It's a clear signal. Just look at what they've been doing. First, they're running live-fire high-altitude drills that are pretty intense. Back in June 2020, they had a massive live-fire exercise at 4,700 meters with around 7,000 troops. It was a full-on simulated attack on enemy positions, using everything from artillery and missile systems to drones and special forces. And in the same period, a different brigade near Lhasa fired more than 2,000 munitions in nighttime drills. That shows you they're training for the real thing, not just a show and tell. They're also doing nighttime infiltration operations in places like the Tangula Mountains. Scout units are performing stealth drills at 4,700 meters under the cover of darkness. They're using night vision gear and drones to clear obstacles, and their sniper teams and anti-tank units are engaging mock enemies. This isn't just basic training. It's about being ready for complex, real-world combat scenarios. Then there are the ground-air combined drills. In 2021, they were running joint combat drills with J-11 fighter jets and armed helicopters working together with mountain infantry brigades. They're practicing pinpoint strikes on simulated targets, showing they're focused on integrated high-tech warfare, not just ground combat. They're even testing their advanced air defense systems. Also in 2021, at 4,700 meters, they were testing their HQ-16B surface-to-air missile system, intercepting simulated cruise missiles and low-flying threats. This demonstrates their ability to control the airspace strategically, which is a major concern for countries in the region. And it's all part of a massive, ongoing effort. A record-setting set of exercises called Peak of the Snowy Region 202 involved over 100 tactical drills. They're coordinating everything from air defenses to ground forces in joint assault operations at these extreme elevations. It's all about improving their technology and their soldiers' ability to adapt to the harsh environment. What's also interesting is their focus on civil-military integration. In 2018, they were running drills where military units were supported by civilian entities like local petroleum companies and city officials. This shows they're not just training to fight. They're also figuring out how to sustain a long-term presence and resupply their forces in a challenging environment. Ultimately, these exercises are a big deal. They prove that the PLA has turned Tibet into a major strategic hub. It's not just about defending the region. It's about being able to project power quickly across South Asia. They're building their high-altitude warfare skills, reinforcing their logistics, and asserting their military dominance right on the border with India. It's a clear message to the whole region about their readiness and their capabilities. So, when we put all of this together, the military strategy, the propaganda, and the ongoing drills, it paints a very clear and a very deliberate picture. Tibet isn't just a remote, culturally distinct region. For China, it's a critical piece of a much larger geopolitical puzzle. First, you have the strategic military advantage. China holds the highest ground on Earth, a natural fortress that gives them a direct and dominant position over rivals like India. They're not just occupying this space. They're actively militarizing it with high-tech infrastructure, new roads, railways, and airfields that allow for rapid troop deployment and power projection across South Asia. Second, you have the propaganda machine working non-stop to control the narrative. This isn't just about domestic politics. It's about reshaping the world's perception. They use everything from simple slogans on billboards to sophisticated media campaigns in English, all aimed at convincing people that their rule has brought prosperity and happiness, and that the old ways were dark and backward. It's a psychological operation designed to legitimize their control and dismiss any opposition as foreign-backed lies. Finally, you see how these two elements meet in the ongoing military exercises. The PLA isn't just building bases. They're constantly running complex, high-altitude drills. These aren't symbolic. They're practicing joint combat operations, testing new air defense systems, and perfecting logistics in extreme conditions. This shows that they are not only securing their position but are also preparing for any potential conflict. In essence, Tibet has been transformed from a unique cultural land into a strategic military hub. The combination of its geography, the heavy investment in military infrastructure, and the relentless propaganda campaign means that China's control over Tibet isn't just political or cultural. It's a fundamental part of their long-term power projection and strategic dominance in Asia. And you'll find thousands of reports out there showing how China is militarizing Tibet. But the military buildup is just one part of the story. Beijing is reshaping Tibet's entire future through demographic changes, resettlement programs, and large scales of mining projects, each leaving a huge impact on the lives of Tibetan people. Culturally, the transformation is unmistakable. In Lhasa, Shigatse, and other major cities, the modern districts are dominated by Han Chinese businesses, while Tibetan are increasingly pushed to the margins. In fact, many of the old Tibetan cities like Lhasa and Shigatse are now preserved more for tourists than for the locals. And if you look beyond central Tibet to places like Kham and Amdo, Han Chinese settlers already form majorities in many key towns. This isn't just development. It's a deliberate reshaping of identity, society, and the future of Tibet. We'll dive deeper into these issues in upcoming videos. For now, I hope this gives you a clear picture of what's really happening inside Tibet and just how seriously China is working to secure and transform Tibet's future.